All right, we are back. Okay, so in the last video, we essentially set up everything we needed for quotes. That was everything to do with creating the model itself. We created a repository to actually go and fetch the data. We determine what our state would look like for quote state. So what quotes are in it, which were the newest ones added, what our status is, and stuff to do with the pagination. We created a couple events, fetching a quote and reset fetching a quote. So fetching it kind of from the beginning and erasing everything. And then we created our block, which essentially kind of maps all that stuff to our state, like with here with this copy with, so that it's a new rendition of it. And finally, we hooked it all up through our character list screen, which is using this awesome package called paginated. That's the package called Infinite Scroll Pagination, right here. If you're just joining now and haven't seen the other ones, I highly suggest you go back to the first one if you are interested in following along. Okay, so what I kind of did in between these two videos is I duplicated almost identically the work for movie and character. Really, it should be almost, if you did a diff on it, it should basically be the same code, except anytime we're saying character, or every time we're saying um, quote, we'd be saying character, that kind of stuff. So we have a new character list screen and a movie list screen. We have two new folders for movie and character with the same sort of structure and layout. Again, everything is, other than the model being a little bit different because a character has things like race, gender, a wiki URL, that kind of stuff. It's basically an identical thing. So let's tie some stuff up. So in my root screen, currently we just kind of have these to-dos to create them. Now we have created them, so let's put them in here. Movie list screen. And what's the other one? Character list screen. And we will put a comma there and save. And let's just do a refresh here. And we should see ugly but working. There's a list of all the movies. And here's a list of all the characters. And this, the characters is a very large resource. We could go on for days and keep getting them. There's a lot of pages of data. We're at the E's, but I imagine it goes all the way to Z. Okay, so let's do some stuff. Let's start with movies. Let's make these a bit prettier. So we're going to go to our movie list screen. And currently we have, we're just putting text with the movie in it. So I'm going to make a new component for us, and it's going to be called movie card.dart. And it will be a stateless widget. We'll call it movie card. And as usual, we'll import a material by going command space and wait for something to load. And boom, material is in. Okay, what I want to do is require a movie when you create one of these. So it's going to be of type movie model, and we'll just call it movie. And we will make this the first parameter here. So it's a required parameter because it's not in these curly braces and it's not in square braces. It is going to be required and the first thing you pass in. So we have a movie card. Inside that, let's actually have a card. Actually, let's use list tile for this. I really like list tile. So list tile, and what we can do with list tile is give it a title, and title can be movie.name. And then that has to be wrapped in a text widget, of course. And let's give it a subtitle of, now if we look at our movie model, what else do we have? So we have name, runtime in minutes, budgeted millions, bunch of stuff like that. Let's use the Rotten Tomato score. So we're going to put this in text, and we're going to go movie.rotten tomato score. Now it's complaining a bit, and that's because this is a double, and we have to pass a string in. So we could just do toString. Alternatively, we could also wrap this in quotes and $ brace, closing brace, which will just print it as a string. So let's save that, and we're going to go back to our list screen. Instead of just using this text, we're going to use movie card. And we're not supposed to pass the movie.name in anymore. We're just supposed to pass movie. And let's just do a refresh. Oh, one other thing I'd like to do, we're defaulting to quotes because that was kind of the only thing we had at one point, but let's put this back to 0. The first was 0 offset, so that when we load, at least when we load from scratch, we'll get the movies one first. So there we go. We have some lovely, lovely stuff happening there. Now, for this Rotten Tomato score, we're getting kind of like, because it's a double, we're getting this trailing 0. And then when it's not a hard number, like not really like an integer, we are getting this really long repeating number in this case. So let's go to our movie card, and we can actually just go .round. You can do that on a double, and it will just convert it to it'll convert it over to this, so it's kind of rounding it. So instead of 66.3, it's just 66, and then we get rid of our zeros. So that's nice. We could, of course, have going to icon beside this, that kind of thing. We can, list tile is really nice, just if you haven't used it. We get sort of like really nice just title and sort of like subtitle stuff. You can also do leading of like an icon, for instance, icons dot, let's do movie. So we got these sort of things. Now there's sort of just with the hot reload on the way that block works, sometimes we need to do a better refresh. So there we get this movie icon. Now if we want it to be clickable, we do need an on press event, but let's also add a trailing icon. And this will be icons dot chevron right. And that'll give us that nice little arrow to make it feel like you can click on it. And yeah, let's add an on press event. It won't do anything yet because, or sorry, it's on tap. It's on tap when you're talking about a list tile. And we'll just keep that empty for now, but at least you can kind of get the feedback here. So the reason, I believe the reason that when we kind of do this, a hot reload as opposed to sort of like a refresh, so for instance, just saving, I think it's because it's appending those appended list items, which are empty at this point when we redo the state. So it's a little bit of an annoyance, but you just either have to refresh or at least like leave the page and come back. Okay, so we got that there. Similarly for characters, let's do something there. I'm actually just going to copy the movie card and open this guy back up. Command B is the shortcut to do that. And let's make character card dot dart. And we're just going to change the word movie. Now, some cool trick you can do, I've shown before, Command D, when you're selecting a word, will find other words one by one. You have to hit it multiple times if you wanted to change everything. However, you'll notice when you first hit it, you get this little option up here. If we want to do matching case, let's just click that and then do it. So we won't actually get this lowercase movie, which I don't necessarily want. So we're going to call this character. And then we can do the same thing with the lowercase movie and just write character. Now, it kind of changed some stuff up here, but magically, just because of our naming convention, that will just work. Now, icons.character is not actually a thing. So let's do, I think we can do person. And there's no Rotten Tomato score on the character. Instead, let's use, let's get rid of these guys here. Whoa, get rid of this here. And we'll do character. Let's see what we have. We have name we're already using. Let's do race. And that's not going to do anything because we have not used this card anywhere yet. But if we go to our character list screen, which is the new one I made, again, just a derivative of the other screen that we had. Right now we just have text, and we're just going to pass in character, and we need to make sure this is imported. And we should get some nice card now. Nice. So now our stuff looks pretty good. We have these lists. These ones are kind of wrapped in a card because they're not going to be clickable. They're just, a way to see stuff. Okay. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping next. So I want to open up my repository that we have, our few repositories. So we have, for instance, character repository, movie repository, and quote repository, which all depend and extend on the common API repository. So I want to show you sort of there's this like pattern happening here. Very often we are passing in, these parameters kind of like this, and it works perfectly fine. But what if something, our API ended up changing, and instead of passing page, we wanted to pass, P or something like that. We'd have to go in all these files and change it. Not a big deal, but the more we can be dry, the more we can not repeat ourselves. Dry meaning do not repeat yourself, the better. So what I want to do in our API repository is sort of create some additional helpers here. Let's look at these side by side. So let's make something to help us generate a page. So we're going to create a function. We're going to just call it page. And it's going to expect us to pass in an int of page, and we'll default that to 1 in case nothing gets passed in. And what we want to return is an array, a map that's kind of like this. So page, pretty straightforward. Then we'll do a semicolon, and let's just tell what this function is going to be returned, and it's basically returning a map with string of int, because this will always be an integer, this will always be a string. I'm going to duplicate this also for limit, and we can just go like this, Command D, limit. And limit, let's not, actually, you know what, let's not make these, let's make these required, because I don't see a use case where you would ever want to use this and then not set it. So let's just do them normally. Limit. So then what we can do over here is, instead of writing page and limit, we can essentially type in, for instance, I'll do this in sort of 2 steps just to see. We could do something like p equals this dot page. That's going to call the parent function page, and then we pass in a number. And in this case, we're going to pass in this page. Then we could essentially get rid of this by going ... p. Now the reason we're doing ... is because we want to, we don't want to put this inside of it. We don't want to have the curly braces also inside of it, and this kind of flattens it. This will basically combine these 2 things together. So we could do that. Now, even easier, even less lines would be just taking this here, ... this dot page, and then ... this dot limit equals limit. We can get rid of this now. So that's just, it doesn't look a ton better, but you could imagine if we ever wanted to change what this key was or something, we could just change it in this one file, and everything will just work. And this will also allow us, if we ever want to add ordering or some kind of like search filter or anything else, we can kind of work with it by creating these helpers in our base class here. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to bring it into our movie repository just by pasting, and we're going to bring it to our character repository. And that should just work. So that's just a little housekeeping sort of thing. Okay, next we need to, I want it when you click on a movie, I want to be able to go to a screen that tells us a little bit more than just the, just the score and name. So let's do that now. Screens. We're going to call this movie detail screen.dart. Okay, so let's make this, we'll start with it as a stateless widget, as I usually do. Detail screen. We want to import material, Command space on any of these things. Boom, we got it. All right, now in our build function, because now we're going to be going to a new screen, we're not going to be within this tab screen anymore. So we do want to use a scaffold in this case. Otherwise, it'll look really funny. Now this is going to be our detail screen. So, we're going to put some stuff in it, but let's just, for now, I'm just going to be very simple, just so we can test if this works. Title. Also, we do want to make sure that when we, oops, that should be wrapped in text. When we instantiate this screen, we're also going to want it to be representative of a specific movie. So let's make that movie model, movie. And we need to pass it in here, this dot movie. And then that way we can actually say movie.title, movie.name, sorry. We'll save that. Now going back to our movie card, because that's where the click event is going to happen, let's do something. So we can do navigator.of context, passing in this helper object here called context, and then we can go push. Now push takes a route, and a route is one option of a route, especially in a material app, is using material paged route. And it has a builder, which we can pass context into. And we want to return whatever screen we are hoping to get to. And in that case, it will be called movie detail screen. And you'll see it automatically kind of put movie in there because it's expecting something called movie, and it just magically worked out because the name of our variable here is movie. So it was smart, it figured it out. And we'll do one more comma there. So now if we, let's do a refresh. And now if we click any of these, like Lord of the Rings series, look, the title's there because we passed that movie in. Battle of the Five Armies, the Two Towers, that kind of stuff. Okay, now this movie detail screen, obviously we want to show some stats about the movie, box office, ratings, awards, essentially just the stuff we have access to in the API. So if we go back to our movie model, as a reminder, we have things like, well, we know the name, we have the runtime in minutes, we have budget in millions, that kind of stuff. So I think I want to show that stuff. But I'd also love to, and I happen to know that the API supports this, I'd love to also just show quotes from that particular movie. So we could just do sort of like a box here and then have a list view under it that is scrollable. But then you kind of lose out on a lot of scrolling real estate because this box that we are imagining to put right here, maybe it's like just that big. It's not going to scroll if we just kind of have it in the body and then have a scroll thing under it. So what we need to use is a nested scroll view. And this allows us to kind of have scrolling within scrolling while working really nicely. So something like looking at your Instagram profile, you can kind of you have that top area, but the whole thing scrolls. So we still are going to use a scaffold, but instead of just putting an app bar here, we are actually going to go right to the body. We're still going to have an app bar, but it's going to be handled a little bit differently. And what I want to use is something called nested scroll view. Now this is doing nested scroll views, it's a little bit tedious. There's a lot of stuff you kind of have to write, but again, there's just bookmark stuff like, check out the code repo here if you need to pull some stuff from it, because there's a lot of little things we have to do, and you're never going to memorize exactly what goes in here. So don't feel like you have to. So the first thing in our nested scroll view is we do want a header. And nested scroll views use something called slivers. Slivers are kind of like groups of widgets that can kind of work together in like an animated way and scroll together and that kind of stuff. So we're going to use a header sliver. And you'll see I get this autocomplete header sliver builder. And it takes build context. As well, there's a Boolean for inner box is scrolled, and this is just a way to track whether or not you have scrolled on the page at any given time. And inside here, we're going to return an array of things. Usually slivers are a list of multiple things. And the first thing I want to actually return is a sliver overlap absorber. And I'm going to do my best to not make a nod to that we need these things, that I just don't I don't think it's necessary to explain what every single piece of these things are. Once we see the code all written out and it working, I can try and go over it a little bit more detail. It's going to have a handle, and we're going to use nested scroll view dot sliver overlap absorb handler for context. I know, very exciting so far. And then also, and I'm just going to put this down in a new line, we need to provide it a sliver. And the sliver itself is going to be a Sliver App Bar. So this is kind of like your app bar, like this one that we're doing here, but it's one that can scroll and move. And what we can do is give it a title. And this is where we would still have text, movie.name. And we can set a couple other things here, like whether or not it's pinned. I'm going to do pinned equals true, but I'm going to comment that out. We'll come back to that one. And I'm going to do force elevated, and that's what we're basically only going to have it force elevated whenever the inner box is scrolled. Okay. So then we close up that, we close up that. Also, still within this list, we want to then have something else. And there's something you can do with slivers. If you just want to use a normal widget, you can wrap a normal widget in a sliver to box adapter. And then within here, you can have a child and you can basically do whatever you want. And for now, I'm just gonna do a container that maybe has a width of double dot infinity, a height of 100, and a color of colors dot red, something, just so we can kind of see it there. We'll be putting, different stuff in there for sure. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like if I save. We are on the, we're just gonna refresh. Okay, so we do have, oh, there's something missing from nested scroll view. Right, you still need, the nested scroll view does still need a body. And we're gonna put that here. And I'm gonna just do a body of container, and just an empty container right now. And let's just see if we can just go somewhere and come back. That's just a hot reload state issue. Okay, so we do have an error. These definitely tend to happen. Now, what is happening? So it's saying failed assumption target nested scroll view sliver overlap absorb handler must be called with a context that contains a nested scroll view. Okay, so something got mixed up here, possibly. Oh, it could be because our body doesn't have a scroll view in it, so it's getting confused. So let's just put a list view here. Children, let's do some text, test 1, test 2. That could be why this is happening. Not 100%, but let's see. Nope, okay, we're still having that error, but we'll keep that because that's still a little bit better than just an empty container. Okay, I see the problem here. I should be passing this context in, not the full context. So we can either just put this like this, or I can just change this to context. And there you go, we have this. Now, so we got this awesome list view thing, super awesome, it scrolls. Now, we're not seeing this container, and it's actually because I did set pin to true, meaning it's actually starting way up here. If I turn off pinned, you should see it. But let's keep pinned on, and let's just make the height something larger. So there we have that, and you can see this whole thing. This thing scrolls, and the list underneath scrolls. Now there's a weird little bit of padding here, and that's just what happens in a nested scroll view when you have a list view, and you can just go padding edge insets dot 0, and that will snug right up against there. So now we have this cool thing where, this thing's kind of scrolling, and you can imagine we could have a refresh indicator there without the whole thing happening, and have our stuff up here. So this is looking good, but obviously we don't just want a red box here. We're going to want to put some text. So I'm going to start with, we're just going to get rid of everything here, that whole container. Actually, we'll still have a container. Containers are nice. And let's give it a color. And let's use our theme.of context. This allows us to get colors from our theme. And let's use primary color dark. And let's then within there, we're going to have some padding. And we'll just use a const of edge insets.all 8, except, oh, I forgot one thing, padding. Essentially, I want to have 8 around the edges, but I want to make up for this space that's kind of going to be hidden under here. Now, we could just do only, and then type in left, right, bottom 8, and then do top as something like 100. But a nice little trick, you can still do all, and then you can go copy with, and we can pass in, for instance, just top of, let's do 110. Okay, so let's save that. And we see now that there is sort of this this box, and the 110 is essentially coming from here, and then this is that 8, 8, 8. So now let's give this a child. And the child itself, we're going to want a column because we're going to want to put multiple things in here. And let's just do children, boom. And for now, let's just do text test 1, 2, 3, just to see how stuff is looking. So there we have our wonderful text there. Okay, now inside here, I'm thinking we're going to want actually a row. I want to essentially put some stats sort of left to right, then more stats, and make it look pretty cool. So let's do a row with children. And this one, we're going to have two items in the row. So to get them spaced nicely, we're going to set a main axis alignment, which is the alignment on a main axis, which in a row is horizontal. And we could do main axis alignment dot space between. So this is just if you've done Flexbox, same idea. Justify content space between in CSS. And then we're going to create, something here to manage or to display something really nice, really nice. So let us do that. So I'm thinking within there's going to be an item, and we're going to make this now, and it's going to have a column because it's going to have a label and a title. So let's give it a text, and we're going to use, in this case, and I'm just going to do this instead of talking to our API, I'm just going to kind of fake this right now, and you'll see why in a minute. So this should be children. And let's have text of something like 1, 2, 3, and let's give it some style. And I want this style, it's going to be of type text style. Construct that. Let's give it a font size of, say, 22. Font weight of font weight dot, let's do with 600. So it's kind of like a little bit less than bold. Bold is 700, but it's still going to be pretty strong. And let's give it a color of colors dot white. And let's just save that real quick. And we see that lovely number there. Just going to do that. And then after that text, we're going to have another one. And this will be something like label. We'll just do that. And it is going to have some style too, of text style, font size. Let's do 12, font weight. We'll make this one bolder. So it's smaller but bolder. Font weight dot. We could just bold. And color, let's make it white but a little bit transparent. So like white 54. We'll save that. So we kind of get this nice little thing here. Now let's make the label just to see how this would look when it's a larger thing. Kind of like that. Now I kind of want these, I don't want them to be center aligned. I do want them to be sort of like left aligned. So in our column, we're going to use cross-axis alignment. And cross-axis alignment on a column is horizontal. And let's use cross-axis alignment dot start. Or sorry, wait, I did this wrong. This should say cross-axis alignment. Oh, I don't know why it's auto-completing to that. Oh, I see what I'm doing. This should not be within the children. This should be right here. Cross-axis alignment dot start. And that'll kind of left align, these items. So that looks pretty good. Now we're going to be making a bunch of these because I want to have stuff for the price, or sorry, the like the revenue, the box office revenue, the score, all that kind of stuff. And if we were to duplicate this, copy and paste it a bunch of times, it's going to get really hard to manage. And if we ever wanted to make a change, that would be really difficult. So what we're going to do is actually extract everything from this particular column, because this is kind of where our dynamic text will be. We're going to extract this into its own widget. And we can do that by going Control-Shift-R while clicking on that and go Extract Widget. And let's just call this Stat. So now we have something called Stat. And that means we can, essentially copy this and have, 2 stats. There we go. Now, obviously, our stat, we want this to be dynamic. So what I want to do on my stat, which has been created right here when we did the extract widget, is let's create some things. Let's create final string label and final string value. And here we will say this dot label and this dot value, and let's make them required, because there's no point rendering one of these if you don't have a label and a value. Then over here, instead of saying 1, 2, 3, we're going to say this dot label, or sorry, this dot value. And then here, let's do this dot label. Now, I do like the look of the labels being uppercase, so we can actually just go dot to uppercase. That way, whatever we pass in will always conform to that uppercase. Okay, now we should have an error because it's saying stat, it's requiring two things. So we of course need to pass in a label, and let's do movie dot, what is some of our things? Let's put the Rotten Tomato score first. Movie dot Rotten Tomato score. Now, because this is again an integer or a float, sorry, a double, we do need to convert to a string, but let's round it first so it looks better, and then do toString. And then for our value, or sorry, this should be value. For our label, we're just going to call it, let's call it score. And I'll just comment this one out so we don't get the error. And now we should see that, there we go, we got that. So let's copy this and do something similar for the runtime in minutes. So let's just call it runtime. And then I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. And let's do movie.runtime in minutes dot toString. And we get that. Now this is, we should be putting like the word minute after this or something, which we could totally do. But I think it'd be good to kind of render it in more like an hour, minute, second kind of vibe. So we're going to create a way to do that, just like a helper. And where should we put that? We're actually going to make a whole new folder called utils. And then inside utils, let's make something called formatting. So I want to make a function that we can pass in minutes and get back something a little bit nicer. So we're going to be returning a string. We'll call it format minutes. And we're going to pass in an integer of minutes. Then what we want to do is return a duration. We're not returning a duration, we're going to return a string, but we're going to start with duration, and we're going to take minutes. Actually, let's do this in different lines. I'll call this duration equals duration minutes, and we're going to pass in minutes. That did not, I spelled it wrong. So we have a duration. Then essentially what we want to do is actually convert that to a string. And that's going to create a string with sort of like the dots between it. And I will, we'll kind of return, I'll just show you kind of as it's going. So we're going to replace, instead of saying toString here, we're going to grab our format minutes function that we made and pass in movie runtime minutes just to see how this evolves. So when we do that, we kind of get this crazy thing here, which obviously is not ideal. So let's do something where we kind of split on that dot. So, because I don't really want anything after that dot, after the period there. And we're going to grab, so split basically makes an array. So this, in this case, would be an array where the first entry is everything before the dot and the second is everything after. So I can go dot first, and that will just get me everything before the 0, 0, 0. And if we return that now, let's see, it's a little bit better. And that's actually pretty good to me. Now, if we wanted it to be kind of like hour, meaning we want to make sure there's a 0 at the start, we could do pad left with 8, up to 8 number spaces, and it will put a 0, and that will essentially make it so that there's a 0 there until it gets to 10 hours, and then it would just be 10. But I actually kind of like the look better without that. 2 hours, 41 minutes, 0 seconds. Now, because this API only returns in minutes, it'll always be 0 seconds, but I think that's pretty clear. Okay, so we have that awesome format minutes, which we might use somewhere else. Now, something else I like to do, I kind of want it so that if they're left aligned, if they're this first in the row, they behave like this, but otherwise they behave, they go this way. So I want to add one other thing to that widget that we are making. We're going to make something called a cross-axis alignment, and we can go this.cross-axis alignment, and let's just set a default. So let's use this default here as our default. And instead of calling this, we're going to call it dynamically. So we can just say this.cross-axis alignment. So making this change should do nothing because we've set a default. Everything will still be the same. Let's put a comma there. But what we can do on the second one is go cross-axis alignment and pass in cross-axis alignment.end. And that will mean that, we're kind of just in this particular case, we want it to be on the end. This one we don't. You could also, if you wanted to, you can make this center or something, and you'll see that it nicely centers. But I like the look of them kind of like that. Awesome. So that's one of our rows. Let's make another row. So I'm just going to copy this row, paste it, and let's actually paste one more. So we can see kind of how it's going to look when we get real stuff in there. Now, in between, I kind of think there should be a little bit more space in between these rows. So we could wrap these rows in padding. That's one way to do it. We could also just, in this case, use sized box, which I think is a perfectly fine approach, and just give it a height of 8. That's kind of like giving, this a padding top of 4 and bottom of 4, and this one a top of 4 and bottom of 4. Just a little bit less code. So we get that little bit of space there. And let's do the same there. So those look pretty nice. Okay, so obviously we want to change the text here. So what else do we have to work with? Well, we have nominations. And in this case, we are going to get rid of this and say movie.academy award nominations. And let's put wins here. So those are just the nominations, and these are the actual wins. I'm going to copy this line, paste it here, and do Academy Award wins. Save that. There we go. 3 nominations, 0 wins. Oh, I'm in a terrible movie. That's why. Let's go. Let's just refresh here. Let's go to the Two Towers. Look, 2 wins. Let's go to Return of the King. 11 wins and 11 nominations. Yeah, that one's good. That's a good movie. Okay. Now we can. Let's change. We have some other stuff. We have budget to work with. We can say budget. Let's just type that out, and let's add revenue here. And we obviously want to use budget. Now they give it back to you in millions, so we can either multiply this by 1,000,000. I'm still going to want to round it, but I'm thinking let's just wrap this in a string like this, and literally put the letter M after it. And I'll do the same for this. And this will be box office revenue. Box office. It doesn't like to autocomplete sometimes. I think it's revenue in millions. There we go. And if we click on it, we should see that it brings us somewhere. Yep, we're good. So there we go. Whoa, look, so much revenue. Now we probably want to number format this better. I forget exactly how to do it, but we can quickly Google Dart. Format number with commas. Look, it's purple. I've been here before. Right, so we can make a formatter. So let's do that, and we'll just make the formatter at the top of our build function. I'm going to make it final. We need to import number format, which is part of the. Oh, we don't have this library yet. We don't have the INTL internationalization library. So let's add that because we'll probably need it at another point. Flutter pub add that. And it goes. And then if we go like this, it may eventually give us the autocomplete. And then down here where we want to format this revenue, let's get rid of the round. Let's go formatter. Oh wait, sorry, that's not how you run it. It is right. I call it formatter, right? Yeah, formatter.format. Let's just see how that guy looks. So now you get the 120,000,000, and let's do this same thing just in case the budget gets into the in case the budget gets in the billions, which obviously it won't, but we'll just keep this consistent. Actually, but let's get rid of the round because this thing will handle that anyways. Oh, this format number isn't very good. 0, 9. Why is it doing a leading 0? Okay, let's find a better. Decimal pattern high. I think we can just do it this way instead of instantiate, we can go dot decimal pattern and just go like this, and then there. That's what we should be doing. Decimal pattern, you still get the commas. It didn't do that leading zero. Okay, there you go, a little bit of formatting stuff. Cool. And you can see this thing scrolls. This is where our quotes are going to be when we are ready to do that, which I think we are just about ready to do. So yeah, next up, we're going to be essentially showing quotes that are associated with this movie, because in their API, there is a way to pass up a movie ID and get quotes that are only part of that. So we're going to do that in the next video. Stay tuned.